Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Jens Heitland Show, where I interview experts from different fields to connect the dots of innovation and entrepreneurship. My name is Jens Heitland, and I am your host. Today's guest is a strategist and a business startup expert. He's the founder and CEO at Dillali.com, an income and expenditure management for SMEs, which is based in Nigeria. Please welcome to the show Ibrahim Bashir. Hey Ibrahim, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. It's great to have you. Great to meet you.
Same here. Thanks.
So before we go into your company, Dillali, what's happening in the startup ecosystem in Nigeria and Africa in general, and all the topics around innovation and your experience in that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What is your story?
Okay. Thanks. So my name is Ibrahim. I was born in Nigeria at a little town called Zaria in the northwest of Nigeria, and I did all my education in Nigeria from primary to university, where I graduated with a degree in journalism, mass communication, and I started working with a web design company. That was my first job, interestingly, in around 2000, 2001. And from there, I've been working in the innovation space, so to speak, in different organizations, and I've run like three startups in Nigeria, which most of them I failed, but that's a story for another day. So that's who I am. I've been lucky to have worked in different sectors, from oil and gas to telecoms to setting up and helping setting up an internet company, among other things. And married with a beautiful wife, and currently living in Lithuania and sometimes most of the time Nigeria. So that's a bit about me.
Great. So, how did you end up in Lithuania? What is
You
the
know,
story behind that?
you know, there's this question that we're always asked, especially as experts in Lithuania, like, why Lithuania? Only if we got like 50 euros for every time that question was asked, I probably will be running a huge fund today. So yeah, I was working 2 years ago, and that was 2019, and my brother sent me a list of countries because I talked about setting up my startup and things,
Hmm.
and I needed to really remove myself from my ecosystem to just take time out to try and focus. And I looked at the different markets, and I saw that Lithuania looked very interesting. Also Estonia and the whole Baltic region. Now, what was interesting was that I have a couple of friends in Lithuania, and I was like, "Oh, Mante and Eugenia in Lithuania." And my wife and I were joking and said, "Okay, let's go there." And applied for startup visa,
Hmm.
and came to start here to see what we could do for at least a year, and test things out.
Yeah, awesome. So let's get into innovation. We start high level innovation. What is innovation for you?
That's a very good question. Well, from my perspective, innovation is making things work in a way that you know is different from the norm, as in creating something not necessarily new, but just doing things in a different way, that is more efficient and beneficial to all stakeholders.
Hmm. And if you then look into the African continent, um, a lot of my listeners are not from Africa, due to my history and so on. So what is special around innovation and the development of innovation in Africa?
That's a good question. I'll say this. Africa is innovative in its own way, right? And you see innovation from the lowest to the highest level
Hmm.
in their own context of things. So one thing is that let's look at medicine, for example. We have what you call herbalists who have been able to go to the forest, look at different trees, different leaves, and have kept testing and testing, and they have different remedies for things like malaria, and among other things, skin issues and things like that. In a way, that has been done for thousands of years or hundreds of years, and that is innovation in its own way and in its own context. I think now the next level is how that innovation is going to, or that knowledge will be passed down from one generation to the next in a way that technology and all other um, innovations in quote can be used to document or improve on these things. So in Africa, innovation is widespread in terms of just the context at which things are done. I think I'll stop there for now, then continue to pick up as we go.
So, I mean, we before we started recording, we talked about how innovation was evolving in Africa. Can you give us a little bit of perspective for those who don't know what's going on and what happened in the past?
A lot is going on. That's it, a lot is happening, and has there's been a huge transformation in the last 20 years, I'll
Mm.
say. And I'll use my country for example. Now, fintech or financial solutions are really driving a lot of innovation and change on the continent, because there are a lot of people that have been unbanked or cannot access funds through the banking system. And what has happened is the biggest challenge for them is access to the banks in terms of location, education, infrastructure, among other things. Now, the singular major catalyst for this to happen was the phone.
Mm.
So because of the infrastructure challenges in Africa, we didn't have the traditional phone networks or very large phone networks. And all of a sudden, GSM technology came, and different companies or telecom companies came to set up GSM with data. So data and GSM was a major game changer. So, like in a country like Nigeria now, we have in 1999 we had a total of 500,000 phone lines, phone connections. In a country that had a population at the time of about 180 million or so, thereabout. Now we have, since the GSM company started, we have, as of I think last week, 120 million phone connections. I mean, or phone users.
Mm.
So that's a major leap. Now, from 500,000 in 1999, by 2001, we jumped to like 1 million. And every year it started growing exponentially. And that is one of the major catalysts for driving a lot of innovation that we're seeing on the continent today.
How is this utilized from startups? Can you give a couple of examples?
Yeah, so there are many. Let me start with some recent ones. Logistics has been a nightmare for a number of businesses. Just the whole idea of coordinating, and some guy, it's called Kobo 360. They decided to get into the logistics space in terms of connecting the right, logistics companies with businesses that demanded their services and things like that. And that has completely transformed the lives of several independent small logistic companies that are single person owned, one vehicle, and things like that. So before, you have a monopoly of certain companies that always got the job. Now you have a situation where anybody that owns a truck has access to customers. So just bridging that gap or connecting them, the buyers and the sellers or service providers with customers creates, a larger pool of opportunity. So these are things that we're seeing. Another is like Flutterwave, for example, the payment solutions provider, which says, okay, they are building like a global switching network for payments. Now, what is so innovative about theirs is that these are things that we take for granted in Europe, for example, or in the West, where you can use your card or just go online and make a payment. But in some countries, many people don't even have cards to make payments. So these companies are now creating the opportunity to use the traditional methods of payments, like even cash payments, and converting that to electronic.
Mm.
Then out of Kenya, the most interesting was 2007 M-Pesa, which created something called mobile money, which you don't need a card with your phone. Your phone is automatically converted to a bank account and you can do all sorts of transactions. That's really revolutionized the way we business is done, not just in Kenya, but most of Africa today.
Yeah. And M-Pesa, if I remember right, was based on SMS. It was not on data,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So it was based on SMS. You want to send money. Let's say I want to send money to you. I just get your phone number and send an SMS with your phone number and the amount. There's a code used. Send, and instantly you receive money. So surprisingly, I got a video last week that, oh, M-Pesa has how many years later? 13 years later or 14 years later, M-Pesa has launched its app now. So so you can imagine it's improved and evolved a
Yeah.
lot.
It's quite interesting if you compare this, like you started to say, comparing it to Europe or to other countries in the world. It's like you're basically leaping over a whole period. It's like just being back in Germany since last summer. It's like everyone was still paying with like paper money. And then if you look into the Nordics in Denmark and Sweden, you're basically paying everything with card, and now everything goes towards app, so where you pay with your phone, with your watch or whatever. In Germany, that was still not existing. it's
Wow.
it's quite interesting if you now compare this to Africa, or specifically M-Pesa, um, the app, or the possibility to pay with SMS. I mean, 2007. That's like no chance here.
I mean, no offense, but when I moved to Europe and I saw the banking system, I was like, dude, you guys are behind. I
Yeah,
mean, Africa's, you're right, that word, leapfrog, just totally jumped. And the way Africans consume or use technology and the solutions out there are they're just on another level. So if an African should come to Europe, I mean, they'll be so frustrated. They probably will go back. Like, everyone's making noise about the challenger banks like Monzo, Revolut, and Co. I mean, we literally had all that like 10 years before.
yeah,
So you're looking at Revolut, okay, it's a really cool app, but you know, it's what we're used to.
yeah.
So and don't forget, right now there are about 50 million mobile money users in Africa.
Mm.
50 million, the largest in the world. And that doesn't include mobile banking, where um, more than 60% of electronic banking is done on the mobile phone in a country like Nigeria. So it's like it's just normal. It's just part of us that your
Yeah.
phone does all these transactions. And now that's just the I'll call it the second layer. So the first layer was the banks, you know, networking, building the systems and processes to make it easy for other layers to come on top. Now you have all the mobile banking, mobile money. The next layer is in terms of the investment products, transactions, and what have you. Another layer is going to build on top of that, and it's just going to continue to drive people in directions that they can't even imagine. Another thing is that, you know, because we don't have the infrastructure, like beautiful infrastructure that you have in Europe, we don't have it widespread in Africa. Many businesses are forced to innovate and find ways around delivery, among other things.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point. When you have a problem, when you have a restriction where you can't do things like others are doing, you get inventive, you get like inspired by different things, and then you find a way of how to solve that in different ways.
Exactly, exactly.
What do you think could the rest of the world learn from the African startup and the innovation drive?
Well, it's a two-way thing. There's a lot that Africa can learn, and vice versa.
Hmm.
So, in terms of what the world can learn, is that everything is moving mobile. I mean, I'm call me a dinosaur. I love my desktop. You know, it's nice to play on the computer and the keys and everything, but everything is done on mobile. And what we've seen is that there has been some openness by some governments towards enabling, creating that enabling environment for this innovation to happen.
Hmm.
So I think one of the things is just speed and giving that open access. So, for example, most of the fintechs, which there are more than 300 fintechs in Africa. They're definitely more than that. I am understating, but I am I think the fact that the banking system was even open to getting them layer on top of them, or connecting into the banking system, was a lot was is probably a lot easier than in other parts of the world because of regulation,
Hmm.
especially with money. It gave an opportunity for anyone to come up with a solution, and the banks were open to accepting or working with such players. It's tough, but that's one thing that I think the world can learn from Africa. Just the speed at which some of these things are done. It's unprecedented.
Yeah. And you're connected to the whole startup system or part of the startup system yourself as well with your business. Do you see that from a perspective that the African startups, do they look globally or do they mainly focus on serving the African needs?
Well, it started from just solving a very basic problem for themselves. But now, I mean, it's a very interesting observation, in the sense that we're still in it. We're still in that process. And by that, I mean, initially the thinking was, okay, how do I solve this problem for 500 people or 500 businesses? Then
Mm.
gradually it comes to, how can I solve it for a region or a country, then a sub-region? Oh, I'm thinking African. And now, 20, 21 years later, we're seeing companies say, okay, we're thinking global. We're no longer thinking of just the African market. So we're beginning to see a couple of companies take the leap towards expanding to the global market. So you have a couple of companies like, I think there's one payments company that has expanded to Mexico
Mm.
from Nigeria. There's another that I think has expanded to Brazil, and things like that, where they're seeing. There's also one the other way from India. They're coming into Nigeria, I think I read about that recently. So you see that everyone is beginning to think global and looking at markets where they have similar challenges.
Yeah,
And that's what's going to drive. I mean, that's driving the thinking these days.
that's super smart. Do you see investment flow from other countries into the startup market already?
Yes. The investment flows they've been growing and steadily growing. We've seen that, like, for example, last year I think close to 2 billion US dollars was invested in African startups. This year alone, the first quarter of the year, I think there are deals worth over 300 million US dollars so far
Yeah.
that has come into to Africa. So we're seeing funding coming in. Very so on average, it's growing, and the pandemic kind of slowed things down. But I think gradually things are everyone is finding their feet, and investors are even more bullish, I believe, for investments and interesting investments on the continent. So, like for example, in my country, Nigeria, over since 2017 till date, well over $1 billion has come into to different startups, and there have been a few exits for some of the startups.
Hmm.
Yes.
How would you describe the startup ecosystem in general? Like, how is it organized? How do the startups communicate? Are there different organizations who do that? How does it work?
Well, the ecosystem is sort of fragmented in a way because Africa is not a country,
Yeah.
so it's a large continent and different regions, and even within countries there are different sort of ecosystems, so to speak, pockets of ecosystems that make the whole thing.
Hmm.
So if you to put things in context, like again, Nigeria, for example, which is not one of the big, maybe landmass is not one of the biggest countries in Africa compared to its neighbors and larger countries. But Nigeria is broken down into 36 states, or what you call regions. Now, there's one region, one state, Oyo State. Oyo State is roughly about probably 7% of the size of Nigeria, and Oyo State is bigger than Belgium. So so when you look at size, it's a really I just needed to put
Yeah.
some context. So you have different ecosystems that are gradually stringing together to form that African ecosystem. So, for example, in Nigeria, you have Lagos as the main center for innovation. Then you have smaller pockets around Lagos or around the country that are coming up, but when it comes to the ecosystem, it's Lagos. Then you have Kenya, you have maybe upcoming Rwanda, you have Ghana, South Africa, Egypt. It's growing really fast, Ethiopia, and such ecosystems. So what we've also seen is that there are different associations that are coming together. There's one in particular, I think it's AfriLabs. They are like a private or non-profit body that brings together different members or different innovation hubs together under one umbrella to just drive conversations and policy. And I believe they have about 600 innovation hubs and accelerators, and just everyone driving innovation as members of that that organization. So that's one way that they're being coordinated. Another is that each country also has its own small innovation community
Yeah.
and members on their network.
How is it with incubators and accelerators? Do you have that as well spread out, or is it then as well in the local pockets?
There are a number of there are many incubators. There are not too many accelerators
Hmm.
in the market, and they're very widespread. So sometimes you may find a cluster in major cities, and sometimes you may see the odd one here and there in some minor cities in around the continent. But most innovation hubs are usually located in commercial cities
Hmm.
because of infrastructure. So it's a challenge to go outside to places when you don't have consistent electricity or good internet connections,
Yeah.
which is one major factor for innovation hubs.
Yeah. So going into incubation and acceleration, you have been part of that ecosystem and part of it yourself as well with your businesses and you as a person. What is your perspective on incubators and accelerators?
Whew. Okay, let me not. Okay, good question. So incubators and accelerators, brilliant. I think especially for African businesses or African startups, it's very necessary because there's a lot that startups can learn from incubators. I mean, the most basic of things like, okay, how to register your business, or how to engage with investors, among other things. It's something that once you go through an incubation process or incubation program, it's the right one, helps startups in really understanding their value proposition and driving that innovation, or reaching their first 100 customers, and things like that. So I think incubators are very important. Accelerators are also equally important, because most acceleration programs come with some kind of support, maybe funding, at least very early stage funding, uh, or something. I mean, among other things, and also the importance of the network of experts and mentors who will definitely support that startup in connecting with the right people, finding the right team, and also access to funding, as well as helping them in having engagements with policymakers wherever there are challenges. So I can't overemphasize the importance of incubators. Now, on the other hand, one of the things I think many innovation hubs and incubators, especially in Africa, need is more support in terms of building the talent that or building the skill sets to impart knowledge on, or to help the startups even more. Building a stronger mentor network with a lot of people with experience, especially local experience, and also mixing that with global global experts. I think once that is done, it will we'll see even more creative and interesting startups come out of the system.
Yeah. Let's go into Dillali. What is that business about, and what problem are you solving?
Okay, so I I used to run businesses in Nigeria, and I'd traveled to even different parts of Africa, specifically Kenya, Ghana, and a few other countries. Now, one of the things that I encountered with all the businesses that I ran was that we had problems in keeping track of our books. All of us hate finance, and we hate keeping records and things like that. And that was one of the reasons I saw that a lot of businesses were running cash flow businesses and not profit based enterprises, because every day cash is coming in. You don't know how much you're spending. You have an idea, but you don't really know. So that was what drove the whole concept of setting up Dillali. I had also lost a lot of money from clients owing me that did not pay on time, or I couldn't get paid for services rendered and things like that you totally ignore. And that's when I calculated it over 10 years, it was like a lot of money. So one day I was talking with someone and I was explaining at his store that, oh, how are you doing this? And he said, oh, he has a similar problem. He can't expand his business because of he can't keep track. And that was how I saw that, okay, this problem was not isolated to, it wasn't an isolated issue to me. And I did some more research and saw that it was something worth looking into. And that's how I started, or that's how we started Dillali, which is a very simple income and expense management tool for specifically micro and small businesses in Africa. So it's the whole idea of Dillali is to help them in keeping track of their records, what they make, how much they spend, among other things, so that when the accountants come in, they can easily access the information when it's time to pay taxes, or they get a knock from the tax office. They're able to pull up all their records so that the tax office doesn't overcharge them, among other things.
Yeah. Do you have then, you mentioned already that there's like a mobile first way of thinking in Africa. Do you do that then as well on the mobile, or is it desktop based?
Right now, we're building the mobile app, but we already have the mobile web solution. It everything is done on the mobile. So even right now, despite the fact that we've not launched the mobile app, which is
Yeah.
coming up soon, we had already designed it for mobile. And interestingly, about 80% of our users use it on their mobile phone.
Yeah.
So that's
It's
interesting.
quite interesting. It's the same when I'm tracking my businesses, even just the basic website, it's 80% mobile users. It's not desktop.
Exactly. So people just want to do stuff, and the whole idea for us is how can we make it very, very easy for them to enter these numbers without spending too much time one doing it, and how do we take all the heavy load and heavy lifting to the back so that we can help them in processing this information and them seeing things from a perspective that, oh, maybe an Excel cannot do today.
Yeah.
So for example, on Dillali, we have a dashboard, and our users can see things like who their best clients, who their best paying clients are. And it helps them in channeling their energies towards the right customers, so to speak, to help them with growing and improving their revenue base.
Yeah, that's brilliant, because these are, like you said, these are a couple of basics every business needs to do. So, or should be doing, let's say it like this. Maybe some don't think it needs to be done, but I think such an easy support. I mean, it's not easy in doing it, but it's like help for the business person to organizing themselves and then focusing, rather than doing this on the side in an Excel table, is doing it with a tool that helps them to focus on their business.
Exactly.
Super smart.
Exactly. So think about it this way. There are 100 million micro and small businesses, formal and informal, in Africa. And 73% of the businesses in Nigeria are single person owned businesses.
Yeah.
They don't have an accountant, they don't have staff and things like that. They are the ones, even when we did our surveys, we saw that they are the ones that manage all these things. So it's a bit of a chore for them. And our goal, I mean, we're not just doing it for, because it's not just solving a problem. The problem that we see, or we envision what we want to solve, it's more, it's deeper, which is our long-term goal is how can we help businesses in structuring themselves so that it can be passed from one generation to the next.
Yeah.
How can you have your affairs sorted in a way that you can easily pick up the business and say, okay, I'm going to sell it, or where are your numbers? Here's everything. Or I'm going to pass it on to the next generation. Here it is. All that. Once this is done, we believe that businesses should not die with the owners, but they should last centuries, and that's what is going to drive everything else in terms of prosperity for humanity.
Yeah, great. And I think, I mean, just thinking globally as well, there's a huge need in other countries as well.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, just seeing my business, like we would benefit from a solution like this as well. And maybe there's something like that I'm not aware of because I have accountants and this kind
Yeah.
of things. But I'm just a super easy, user friendly version would super help me. Just if I reflect that back, it's
Exactly, and that's innovation.
yeah,
To me, sometimes people may think that making a rocket is innovation, but for me, again, like I said, the innovation comes in the simplicity of doing things. I told you earlier that when we were talking, I told you that we see maybe finance as something that can be boring or very very difficult for a lot of businesses, but it's a necessity. It's
yeah,
an integral part of business. So how can we make Dillali the IKEA of finance for for businesses? IKEA, you just get the manual and put everything together, and voila, it's working, and it's a very beautiful model. So
yeah.
and that's what we want to emulate.
That's a great perspective.
Yes.
So I would like to look a little bit forward. How do you see innovation evolving in Africa and maybe as well together with your business?
The next 20 years, I I can't even imagine what it's going to be like, because think of it this way. Let's look back at the last 20 and what has happened. GSM, or mobile telephony, and data happened. Phones got cheaper, and now you have roughly about 500 million mobile users in Africa. Most of them, I mean, at least 20% of them, that's about 100 million, use smartphones
Mm.
already. Now, smartphones are getting cheaper, data is getting cheaper, right? We've just scratched the surface of the last 20, and we've seen what fintech has done or is doing in the continent. Now, thinking of the next 20 is that think about the next layers that will happen there, from medicine to logistics to education. Education is becoming hot because the way we educate, I see a lot of disruption
Mm.
going to happen in the education space, and how we just learn. It's archaic and it needs to change. So we are going to see that with governance. So we're seeing there's going to be a lot of change for us at Dillali. We also see this change because of e-government, for example, and because of the banking system. There's going to be more oversight in terms of tax payments, because governments or the tax office now has access to seeing what transactions are.
Mm.
I see a situation where Africa is mostly cash based, driven. More than 70% of transactions are done in cash, which is a major improvement from 95% before. So imagine when that all that money, that cash based system, moves into electronic.
Mm.
That is going to change everything in terms of just tracking and keeping stock of everything, which will reduce waste and increase innovation. And I see blockchain and something called DeFi, decentralized financing.
Yeah.
That's going to be huge. I see Africa using and embracing more and more of blockchain over the next couple of years.
It will be interesting to follow that.
Yes.
I would like to transition to the last part of the podcast where I'm always asking a couple of rapid fire questions.
Sure.
So, question number one is if you would have the possibility to work with a project, lead a project that's impacting every human being on earth, what project would it be and why would you choose that project?
I think that's a tough one. I think it will be a project about, I can't even think right now. I I think it would be something around equality in terms of access, making it easy for a level playing field for everyone everywhere in the world. So anything around equality,
Mm.
I think that's something that I would like to see, or project I would like to see or do.
Cool. Where will you be in a year from now? And you can answer that from a personal perspective and or business.
Okay, where will I be in a year from now? Maybe I may be in Lagos, Nigeria, or Ghana, or one of those countries, trying to close a deal with our future 10,000 customers that should be on our platform by then. I also see myself being, you know, probably just in a better place mentally, and just mentally, in terms of the experiences that we've gathered in running or starting the journey of our startup.
Mm. How do you keep yourself up to date? So what are the different resources you take? How do you keep yourself educated?
YouTube, YouTube, podcasts, um, blogs. I read a lot of blogs, and I'm in different Telegram groups that people just Telegram groups that they post different things, and I read up there.
Mm. Cool. Ibrahim, was a super pleasure having you on the call. It's super interesting to hear your stories and learn from you. How can people reach out to you? Where can people find you?
Oh, I'm on LinkedIn, Ibrahim Bashir. Same, I am also on Twitter and all the other social media platforms.
Mm.
You can also check us out on my Dillali. That is MyDillali.
Yeah. I will
Yeah,
put it into the show notes as well so that people can directly click through.
definitely, definitely. Thanks.
Awesome, Ibrahim. Was a pleasure. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you so much.
Cool. See
See
you.
you. Bye.